Walsh. I'm a film critic for the Tribune News Service and the LA Times. So excited to talk about this movie with you all and with the cast and filmmakers. So please help me welcome writer-director Oz Perkins, star MAIKA Monroe, Longlegs himself, producer and star Nicolas Cage. Well, thank you all for being here. Love this movie. Don't think I've ever felt such a sense of creeping, ominous dread for like several hours after a film. So we're all gonna get through this. But Oz, I'm curious, just in terms of the idea for this script, the genesis, what was the inspiration for Longlegs?
Not to sound wholly craven about it, but if you're an independent filmmaker, the game is how to get people to pay attention, right? How to get people to watch what you're doing and show up, give a shit. It's very hard to do. Everybody in this room knows it's hard to do to get anybody to give a shit about what you're doing. And so for me, it was kind of about, what am I gonna do that I can do my thing, but have people feel comfortable about it and have people kind of desire it? So it became, what's the thing that maybe people might want? Right? Like the awareness of the audience. It sort of started with an awareness of the audience and thinking, Silence of the Lambs, like a good stylized serial killer movie is a good time. Like real life serial killer stuff is a drag. But stylized serial killer stuff, like what Hopkins did in Silence of the Lambs, that's not a serial killer, that's something totally else, right? That has something to do with reality. So I wanted to do sort of a pop serial killer movie. Here we are.
At what point did you start thinking of Nicolas Cage as your boogeyman?
I never stopped thinking about it. And how about Nicolas Cage, huh? Pure... Here's what Nick is, pure joy, right? And you watch a picture like you just saw, pure joy from top to bottom. So if you're gonna be making a movie like this, that is supposed to be a good time, I promise you, folks, it was meant to be a good time. I wasn't trying to bum anybody out. I wasn't trying to make anybody throw up in the aisle or cry on their way home. I wasn't making anybody like, oh my God, the devil's gonna get Jesus. None of that was on my dance card. It was just to have a good time, and so you bring Nicolas Cage along and you're gonna win.
Just some good old-fashioned family fun, this movie, I think. Nick, when did you start talking to Oz about this film and about this character?
I'm not entirely sure about the exact date, but I do recall that I think I just finished Renfield, and the script to Longlegs came in, and I was told that it was very good and I should read it, and I found out it was Oz who wrote it. And I was a fan of his movie Gretel and Hansel. And I knew that I wanted to work with Oz Perkins, and then I found out I was going to be playing a serial killer of sorts. And I know about his lineage and that his dad pretty much defined the serial killer as Norman Bates. And I was like, well, this is going to be challenging. What the heck can I do that Anthony Perkins didn't do, and how can I walk on that set and feel confident? I thought, well, I'm gonna have to try and go somewhere entirely different. And for some reason, I just heard and I don't mean this in any negative way, I heard my mother's voice, and then I started taking my little cell phone, I practiced everything on my cell phone, I started reading the scenes and then sending them to Oz. Right away, and like on Christmas morning, really early, like 4 in the morning. And my mother wasn't, she wasn't evil, she wasn't satanic, she wasn't like that, but she did do things that were profoundly ridiculous. And I'd be looking at her cracking up, and then I'd go, wait a minute, that's kind of scary. And I'd going constantly on this oscillating EQ reverb with my mother simultaneously being hilarious and terrifying, and think, well, I've got to do that in a movie. And so Longlegs was the choice.
Subtitle, When a Film Director Gets Lucky.
So yeah, what was your reaction to these videos? Were you like, yes, more, like let's shape this together, like crafting the performance, the presentation of Longlegs?
We did a few sort of phone calls together, face-to-face, FaceTime, where we sort of talked things through, and we made some guesses. But you did all the work. I mean,
well, I was doing all these voice messages with my little daughter, who was like maybe 8 months at the time, crying in the background. I'm going, "Hail Satan!" I was like, "This is really dark, man." And she's crying as I'm practicing the Longlegs libretto, and so you think it's more in this direction or that, and we were just we were EQing it together. It wasn't, he said it was like going, let the lion go and get the whip and the lion tamer with the chair. It wasn't like that. He did work with me very closely and build it. You know that, right?
yeah, I remember giving my phone to one of our producers for the first time. We were shooting, it was before Nick got there, and I gave him the phone with the audio recording on. I said, just go check it out. And he went over and sort of stood in the shadows and listened to it, and he came back and was like, "Bro, I shed a tear."
Where are those, by the way? We should burn those. Please delete.
That's gonna be on the Blu-ray, hopefully.
They've been backed up, bro.
So
You got an Apple time machine on that, bro.
got it on the hard drive. When did MAIKA get into the mix of this brain trust? Did you also just read the script? Did you want to work with Oz? Like, what was the connection here between you two?
I was sent the script. I had worked with, I just finished working with one of the producers on this, and he had said, I have a script I think you'd really like. I read it and I fell in love with it. I'm such a massive fan of that genre of film. I grew up loving it, and it was just, it felt like nostalgic and yet something completely brand new. And so I remember, meeting Oz, and it was just so cool to hear, his idea of this world he wanted to create. And I left the meeting and I told my team, I want this so bad. And so they're like, okay, let's see. And then I hear from my team, they're like, he's just not sure. I sent in a tape because I wanted it so bad. I was like, this needs to be mine. That doesn't happen all the time, where you read something and I was like, I need to play this part. And here we are.
So your performance of Lee Harker is very internal, whereas Longlegs is very external. Like, you have to do a lot of stuff that's very subtle. Your voice, especially, is it feels like she's trying to control and compose herself and sort of project an era, a thing of toughness, a facade. What was your process in sort of finding out how to perform her, what her physicality is, what her voice is?
We were really lucky that the first day of filming was one of the first scenes in the film where I'm put on this case. We're knocking door to door, and it's a very intense moment. You kind of go through the character's range, and through that day, I think a lot of the mannerisms of her kind of it just happens supernaturally, and I think with her there is so much suppressed, and so it's just making sure that I was very aware of all the trauma that she's been through, and then just shoving all of that down. And what is that? How does that make you interact with the world?
And it's really interesting. Anybody out here who's made movies before knows that you can prepare a lot. You can write a lot, you can plan a lot, you can think you know a lot, but then you kind of get there on the day and it is its own thing, right? You sort of discover what's happening as it's happening. It's an exciting thing. It's perilous, right? Because your first week is your first week and you kind of can't get it back, right? But when you have great people, when you have really dedicated artists and people who are in control of their instruments, as they say, there's an excitement to discovering the thing as it's happening. There's a very live quality to a film shoot where things are sort of evolving and appearing, and you're noticing things and you're inventing things and you're sort of finding things and settling on things because it's so different than the previous stage, which was writing and preparing. The doing becomes a whole other animal. And so, just happy to report that it went really well. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm sure that can go like off the rails pretty fast. Oh, fuck. You know, we gotta fire Harvey Keitel from Apocalypse Now because it just isn't a thing. But that happens, I guess, but I suppose I've been lucky.
At what point in the shoot did you shoot the scene where Lee and Longlegs interact for the first time?
That was pretty late in the schedule. It was your last day for sure. Yeah, we were well into it, and as everybody who's read anything about the movie knows, at that point they had never interacted, they had never met, they had never seen each other. She had never seen his makeup, she'd never heard his voice, she had never interacted, she had no idea what to expect. And I was like, ooh, this is...
I think we had shot about half of the scene, and I think MAIKA remembers in the middle of it, looking the way I do, I just went, oh, by the way, I just want you to know I'm a really big fan. And I am. I saw her in It Follows, and I just think she's effortless, and I don't see any acting. I think it's fantastic. So when he told me she was going to be doing the movie, I was very, very fired up about working with her. And yeah, he kept us apart, didn't want us interacting at all. So when that day happened, it was there was some adrenaline for both of us because I was meeting someone that I'm a big fan of, and I'm doing it as this character that looks and sounds like that. It's not exactly how you want to meet one of your favorite actors, but here we are. And it went well, I thought. It helped, don't you?
And then there's Micah's side of the things.
What is Micah's
My
side
scene
of
partner's Nicolas fucking Cage.
I mean, look, but I know that this was like a huge part of the marketing, which I don't know if you guys have seen. You know, my heart rate was true. It was pounding out of my chest. It wasn't just. I mean, there were nerves, of course. You know, it's a massive climactic scene. I don't know what I'm walking into, but I'm walking into the room to meet Nick Cage. I mean, like, what do you mean? It was insane. It was absolutely insane. I'll just never forget that day. It was a whole new experience.
It sounds like 12 pages of like pretty hard dialogue.
Not yet, just sort of
Masterfully
really easy
composed, difficult dialogue.
And obviously we have to talk about Longlegs' beautiful look. So who was coming up with how Longlegs would be presented? The all-white denim, the makeup, I want to hear about the thinking behind that.
Well, one of the first things I said to Oz, there were a couple things that we said to one another in the beginning. The first thing that he said was, this is a movie about my mom, which isn't what you expect to hear from a filmmaker when they're making a horror film. I said, okay, well that's very curious, Oz, because I see this character in some ways about my mother. So we hit it off like gangbusters after that. And then I said, but by the way, I don't want to look anything like myself. I want to be a complete departure physically so that I can access where I need to go internally and feel liberated by the fact that I'm doing these horrific things, but I don't look like how maybe some folks think of me looking like. I look nothing like that. And he helped me with that, and he was great about it. I do remember my mother wearing Noxzema cold cream and looking at me in the mirror like that in the bathroom, and I'm screaming and running out about it. And then he said, no, I want your face to be covered in white, and he did it because of Dylan on what was the album? The
Rolling Thunder Review, Bob Dylan's White.
Yeah, and I was doing it because of cold cream. And so it worked, again.
You see, it doesn't matter because
it doesn't matter. It was kismet.
It's a little like
Tommy Dearest, not at all. That wasn't in the equation at all. No, there was no wire hangers.
We never
at
talked
all.
about it.
No.
Longlegs has a lot of like childish sort of like childlike playful
So what it
gestures.
is I was trying to find this tone, this tonality, which is a very risky tone, because it was a tone where I was thinking, yes, I want to get the audience laughing, but they don't know why they're laughing. Are they laughing because they're nervous? Are they laughing because they're a little bit, they think it's absurd? But I want them to be driving home and then thinking, oh, that was really funny, and then, oh, wait, that wasn't that funny. And then I want them to go to bed, and I want Longlegs to be a little worm that goes into their brain and infiltrates their dreams and disturbs their sleep. And thankfully, I've had many people tell me, Nick, I had a nightmare about Longlegs. That was exactly what I was going for. You got it, buddy.
I was doing color correction in a color correction stage out here in sort of Hollywood, and we had the picture on the screen. It was just me and the director of photography and the colorist, three of us sitting there watching this stuff. And we're doing the interrogation scene, and Nick is in full regalia, of course, and doing the thing. And the lady comes in to bring us our coffee and our lunches, and I said, excuse me, could you just hold the picture? Who's that on the screen? I said to her, and she said, Meryl Streep?
Sorry, Meryl. I love that story.
I said, correct.
It's fantastic.
You're 1 for 1. We'll ask you again when you come in next time.
Yeah.
One of the things I love in this film is the sort of minor characters who are interacting with both Lee and Longlegs, the girl in the store, the institution director, and they offer these little pops of black comedy as well, sort of absurdism. So, Oz, why was it important to have those characters sort of like to place Lee and Longlegs like in a world, you know, maybe not the real world, but like in a world that you are creating, like to have them interact with other people?
Because this was supposed to be fun, right? Because just what I said before, like I don't know if anybody in my job, horror director, if that's the job that I have, writer director of horror movies, set out to make people feel bad. It's possible that that's in their mind, that that's what they're trying to do. I was just trying to turn people on and have a good time at the movies, and to see something they hadn't seen before and be sort of tickled and be like, oh, that was fucking crazy. And so that's what we got. And so when I'm casting and I'm looking at these individual parts, it's about trying to just salt and spice your dish, right? Like it's easy to get the person it's easy to get the coroner who plays it like a coroner, or you can get the guy that I got, who plays it sort of like I love this doll. You know, and then it's easy just to get that guy in and to say to him between takes, you know, when they leave, he's gonna like, you know, with the doll.
So anyway, sometimes my mom, I think it was about 3, and she would try to put me to sleep by going like this, cuckoo, 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 and I would be 3 going, why? And not sleeping. Anyway, that made it in the picture.
Yeah, and that's my daughter playing the girl at the counter at the hardware store. That's a 4th generation Perkins on camera, right? So it's fucking cool. And yeah, her name's B. Perkins, and I was like, do you want to do this? It's like kind of a scene between you and Nicolas Cage, like it's just the 2 of you. She's like, cool, what am I wearing?
She's terrific.
She's terrific.
I also wanted to talk, I love the way this movie looks, these slow creeping zooms, the practical lighting, these sort of oppressive sets and the compositions where it feels like MAIKA is like in this giant room full of stuff like constantly surrounding her, oppressing her. How did you work with your DP, Andre Zavrocki? He does amazing things with light. How did you find him? Like, what was your, visual lingo with him?
I found him through the guy who shot Gretel and Hansel for me. His name was Gallo Oliveris, and Gallo and I were really good collaborators, and Gallo was supposed to make the movie with me, and then Gallo got eaten up by Disney and Fede Alvarez and all this stuff. For endless years they take him away to make the Alien picture. Gone. And so I'd interview people for the DP position, and I'd send them to Gallo. I'd say, I think this person's pretty cool. I like this person. And he's a grouchy Mexican guy. It's shit. So after about 20 of those, I said, you know what, fucker, just tell me who I should hire. Just give me the person. He's like, this is the person. So Andres came on. Andres had made, I think, one very small movie prior to this. So this was really his first thing. And it's one of those things like, you work with people, and some people have really good taste. Some people have impeccable taste. Andres Orochi has impeccable taste. He just knows what it looks like. And it's not something you can teach, it's not something you can talk about, it's not something you can explain. You either have it or you don't have it. And he has it. And so we just connected on what that felt like, and we had similar references, we liked the same things. I've said in interviews before, we never talked about horror movies, we never wondered about it looking like horror movies. We were obsessed with Gus Van Sant. Like, if you can find a kind of a guiding spirit or a patron saint that you're like, oh, it's that thing, and you have someone with impeccable taste who can translate, and then you start just talking about, oh, it's My Own Private Idaho, oh, it's Last Days, oh, it's these movies are amazing, and it just sort of starts to bleed its way in, and you trust the person who you're working with, and if they're great, and for me, I just stay out of their way. Do you know what I mean? Otherwise, I'm just going to trip it up. Because it doesn't need me to be that brilliant about it. He's doing the brilliant thing, so I can sort of do other things.